What's up YouTube, this is Tubedigga. In this video we're going to talk about how to manage the memory in your MPC, and that is both for the RAM memory in a project and the storage memory for your SD card, SSD drive, USB drive, etc. Before I get into this video, I just want to thank all my current subscribers, anyone that's liked and shared my videos, anyone that follows and supports me on social media, and of course all my current patrons on Patreon. On my Patreon, each week I give away a brand new sample pack, key group program, drum program, or a project file, etc. Please head over to my Patreon, which is www.patreon.com/Tubedigga, and become a patron of mine if you'd like to support what I'm doing here on YouTube. If you like private lessons with myself over Zoom, Skype, or Google Hangouts, please contact me at tubedigga@gmail.com for more details. My email address is in the description of this video. So let's first of all talk about how to manage the RAM memory in a project. Now, if you're new to this terminology, RAM stands for Random Access Memory. And that memory is the memory that's being used in the current project you're working on to generate sample playback and to record samples. So if we go up to this icon in the top right corner of the main page, we can see that I'm exceeding 50% or so of that RAM. For me personally, that's too much, and this is where you can get crashes and glitches in your project and lags in playback, etc. It might be different for you because you might be doing different processes with those samples in terms of the filters, the envelopes, looping, etc. that are going to contribute to the MPC getting caught up, because it's going to work obviously alongside the CPU. Now let's not worry about CPU too much at the moment. That's only really affected if you're using tons of effects. So let's stick to RAM and samples. So RAM, as said, is how the MPC plays back the samples and allows you to record or sample new sounds into your current project. So let's first of all talk about how to manage them when it comes to drum programs. These are the most simple programs to work with when it comes to managing your memory. Now we're going to talk about these top pads here because the rest are off camera, obviously. Let's say we didn't want those in our project. The simplest way to do it is press and hold your shift button on your MPC1, MPCX or MPC Live. So press and hold that and then press the copy button. Now you get this dialog box and it says delete pad. So we can choose those 4 pads. We can see that they're selected here and we can just press delete. Now, as long as those samples aren't being used in any other program or they're not on an audio track, the MPC is going to treat those as unused. Then we can go to this icon again, System Resources, Purge, Unused Samples. Press OK. Those samples are now not in the RAM memory of this project. However, let's say you've already saved this project before purging any unused samples. Those samples are going to exist on whatever storage media that you are saving this project to. Let's just take a look at that. Let's go to the browser. I'm going to go to my projects folder. Now, the project that I've got here is just a dummy project. It's not this project, but this will be the same for any project. You'll see this little icon over here that I've currently got unchecked. By default, it's checked, or it's got a line through it. And all we can see here is our .xpj, which is the project file extension name for MPC projects. So it's .xpj, and that is an MPC project file. If we uncheck it, we get all these projects' respective project data folders. So I'm going to go into this top one here. So in this folder, this is where you're going to see all the assets that are being used in this particular project. All the wave data, the samples, and any sequence files or program files or MIDI files, etc, etc. Let's say we save this project and we go into the project data folder. Now we can choose to delete any samples that we don't want to be taking up the storage memory, which is different from RAM. Okay, so this is the storage memory of your SD card or SSD drive or USB stick, etc. So there's 2 ways that you can do that. You can simply do it by name. The other way to do it is just to audition those samples if you don't know. So you can just sit there and go through all these individual samples, press the play button or just move your data wheel and go through all of these samples. When you found the ones that you don't want, you press and hold shift and you press delete file. and that will delete that from the actual project data folder for a particular project. So that's how you manage the samples and delete samples from your actual storage media. Once again, that's going to have no effect on the RAM memory, which is the project memory for this particular project or any other project. So to recap, for drum programs, we're going to select our samples that we don't want by pressing and holding Shift and press copy, so we can delete those samples off the pads. The other way that we can do it is go to the program editor, choose a pad with a sample that we don't want, and we can just press the bin symbol here on this layer or any other layers where we've got samples loaded and any other pads. Again, go to Purge, Unuse Samples. Now, things get a little bit trickier when it comes to key group programs. So let's switch to key group programs. Let's say we're using a few notes in this key group program, but we're still trying to save memory. Now, this is where it gets tricky. Key group programs, particularly ones from expansion packs or ones that have been professionally produced, will be using multiple samples spread over multiple pads. Some of them, which will be fully fledged multi-sample instruments, may well have an entire range of notes, which is going to be a huge amount of data. So every pad will have a different sample at a different pitch to give us that realistic playback on a key group program, because as we know, it's a melodic or a chromatic program type. This is going to be really tricky because we're going to have to know which notes are referencing which samples or which pads are referencing a particular set of samples to be able to know. As said, that's going to be really difficult if you decide to get rid of one sample, but other pads are utilizing it or it's being spread over that range, if you understand how key groups work. So if you don't, please go and check out my beginner's guide to key group programs, and that'll explain how they work. So you can either choose to keep the key group program and manage your drum programs, any large files that might be in a drum program, key group program, or on an audio track. And you're just going to have to live with the fact that if you're using, 6 key group programs that have got a ton of samples in each of them, and it's just going to be impossible to delete them, there's only really one workaround that you can utilize. And you can only really do that once you're happy to commit the track in its current state. So what I mean by that is, let's say this track has got a melody or a bass line with this bass key group or key group program. We would solo that track, go to the pencil icon, and then we can bounce to sample. So this will bounce this sequence to sample, okay? So we can do it there, bounce to sample for the entire sequence because we've soloed it. Or we don't have to solo it. We can literally go to the track area and choose bounce to sample there. So it will just do the same thing. Obviously, we don't need to sample it because it's just going to bounce this particular track with this key group on it. And what you're going to be left with is however many bars of this sample. The data of that sample might be even bigger than the collective sample data which the entire key group program is using, if that makes sense. Beyond that, what you might have to do is say to yourself, well, actually, it's just playing the same notes over and over again. So then you'd have to chop that big long sequence of that wave down to a loop, and then you can just copy that loop by triggering it from a drum program, if that makes sense. So let's just say it's just an 8-bar loop. You're not going to have much trouble with that. You can trigger that 8-bar loop as a one long 8-bar sample multiple times, and it won't be taking up any additional RAM. If you've got 4 minutes of the same loop, there's absolutely no point in having that in memory. You can cut it down and duplicate the notes for it, or put it in an audio track and just duplicate the references of it on your audio track. I hope that makes sense. Key group programs are going to be a bit trickier to manage, but quite often I see people who have sent me projects and want some help with them so I can go through the projects and see what's going on. They will literally have 15 key group programs that they've not bothered to purge out of memory. So obviously you can go back in, if you're that sort of person that likes to go in an expansion pack and load in one after the other just so you can try stuff out. Please do make sure that you're deleting the entire program. So to do that, let's say we don't want this entire program. This will purge the program and all its associated samples out of memory. So we go pencil, delete. It says, are you sure you want to delete this program? Yes, we delete it. We go up here, purge, unused samples. You can see there's a little bit of a progress bar, and it's deleted all the data for that program. For clip programs, it's just the same as drum programs, really. If you've got a few clips on your pads that you don't want, you press and hold Shift, press copy, choose the clips or the samples on those pads, again, delete. Audio tracks, pretty self-explanatory. If we go to edit audio, let's just load something there. Now this is a really short sample, but let's say this was 3 minutes long. Obviously that's going to be taking up a lot of RAM. If you don't need it, you can choose your eraser tool, just delete that. Simple as that. Now the MPC is going to treat it as being unused. Again, we can purge unused samples. Let's say now, after deleting lots of programs and the associated samples, or a combination of the two, let's just say, for example, our memory now is down at 25%. We've got no glitches, everything's smooth, and we know that we've got a really nice, clean, low data project. We might have saved our project a long way before that, which means all the samples that were previously in it will have been saved onto our storage media, our SSD drive, SD card, USB stick. We're now talking about using up excessive storage memory, which might also be a problem when you go to save other projects in the future. You're going to run out of space. So let's go back to that. Let's make sure we've unchecked this. Again, it's just a case of going through that project data folder and deleting any unused samples. So do make sure you're not deleting anything that's being used by that project, because you'll find if you load that project back up and you've made a mistake and you've deleted something that was being referenced in a program or an audio track, you're going to get an error message saying cannot find such and such file .wav. So I hope this video has been useful, guys. Please drop any comments or questions you've got down below. Please head over to Patreon if you want to support me on Patreon and become one of my patrons. It's www.patreon.com/Tubedigga. Once again, I give away free things every single week. If you want private lessons with myself, please contact me at tubedigga@gmail.com and we can have a one-to-one private lesson over Zoom, Skype or Google Hangouts. My email address is in the description. Take it easy, be safe, and I'll see you on the next one. This is Tubedigga and I'm out.